People think love is a feeling. It is not. Love is a system you build with someone who triggers you in tiny, constant ways until you either learn how to hold yourself or you start blaming them for your inner chaos. And here is the painful truth nobody says out loud. Most couples do not break because the love died. They break because daily life exposed the same personality differences again and again, and instead of learning each other, they began competing with each other. Welcome to the Hidden Self, where we talk about the truths that make people uncomfortable because they require accountability. Today we are going to talk about a question that sounds simple, but is actually brutal. Why does love often require one person to be sharp and strategic, while the other person needs to be tolerant, soft, and steady? And why does it go wrong when both people try to be equally smart, equally right, equally quick? This video is not about being nice or agreeable. It is about how your nervous system reacts to someone who does not move at your speed. It is about why a home can become a courtroom. It is about why we are both strong is sometimes just another way of saying we are both unwilling to yield. Because in real relationships, intelligence is not the prize. Intelligence is the weapon you unknowingly pick up, and tolerance is not weakness. Tolerance is the steering wheel that keeps the vehicle on the road. So pay attention. If you have ever felt irritated by your partner's competence, or offended by their slowness, or exhausted by their constant need to debate, you are going to recognize yourself. And if you have ever felt like you had to pretend you were smarter than you are, or like you were being treated like the lesser brain in the room, you will recognize that too. Let's begin. The first truth is this. Two highly intelligent people often have a harder time loving each other than two mismatched minds. Not because love cannot work, because the daily experience becomes psychologically expensive. The person who is sharp usually lives with a low-grade alert. They notice everything, the tone of voice that barely changes, the way the cupboard is closed, the fact that the trash bag is tied differently this time. They do not only see details, their mind automatically processes them as signals. Their brain turns life into pattern recognition and turns pattern recognition into judgment. So when their partner forgets something small, the sharp person does not experience it as a mistake. They experience it as disorder. And disorder feels unsafe. Even if they never say that out loud, their body reacts. Their shoulders tighten. Their voice becomes more efficient, more clipped. They start correcting like they are doing quality control. Meanwhile, the other person might not be dumb. They might simply be different. They might carry a calmer processing style. They might tolerate mess, postponement, imperfection. They may not analyze everything. They may just live. But here is the uncomfortable part. The sharp person often cannot tolerate the unanalyzed version of reality. Their mind demands logic, coherence, and rational alignment. They do not want to fight. They just cannot stop wanting the other person to think correctly. So the home becomes a constant negotiation of correctness. A forgotten item becomes a moral lesson. A slightly delayed response becomes a pattern of disrespect. A neutral comment becomes a debate prompt. And because both people are quick, the conversation escalates faster than emotions can cool. You might think the problem is communication. It is not. The problem is that the relationship has installed a debate protocol. If both partners are sharp, both will feel competent enough to argue. Both will hear silence as avoidance. Both will hear vulnerability as weakness. Both will interpret the other person's perspective as flawed logic. And because each partner has a strong mind, each one believes their reasoning is the authority. This produces a specific kind of exhaustion that is hard to explain. You are not just tired from work, you are tired from mental readiness. You are tired from being on standby for the next correction, the next challenge, the next attempt to prove a point. You may have seen this couple dynamic in real life. The couple where every disagreement becomes a meeting. The couple where the kitchen becomes a negotiation table. The couple where one person says, "I think we should," and the other person immediately turns it into a case brief. They do not even notice they are doing it. They think it is normal to dissect everything, but it is not neutral. It is emotional pressure disguised as intelligence. In these relationships, even small things start carrying a hidden message. When the sharp person feels the unsharpened partner is not keeping up, they may start blaming. When the unsharpened partner feels blamed, they may start defending. That defense is often not loud. It is quiet and stubborn. But stubbornness becomes another kind of escalation. And the worst part is this. Both people can be so convinced they are being reasonable that they never notice they are actually trying to control the relationship. Because control is what your mind reaches for when you feel uncertain. If you do not have tolerance, you will try to force certainty into existence by making the other person agree. If you cannot be wrong, you cannot relax. So two intelligent people together can create a constant low-level battle, not dramatic fights at first, just repeated friction, like two stones rubbed together until heat builds. You do not always see the sparks, but you feel the burning. And then one day, you realize something terrifying. You do not miss them as they are. You miss them as they were before your standards got louder. You miss their softness before you turned love into evaluation. This is why the healthiest relationship formula is not about both being equally smart. It is often about one person being the navigator and the other person being the stabilizer. The second truth is the one nobody likes, because it suggests that harmony comes from contrast, not symmetry. A happy marriage is often built on a sufficient gap, not too big, not too humiliating, just enough difference for the gears to interlock. Think of it like machinery. If two gears are exactly the same size and exactly the same shape, they do not smoothly mesh. They grind, they collide, they create friction and wear. But if one gear is slightly larger, slightly more directive, and the other gear is slightly more accommodating, the movement becomes natural. That is what the right roles actually do in a home. One partner anticipates, they think ahead, they worry early, they prepare plans. They see the obstacles before they exist. Their mind is a forecasting tool. They are often the one who knows where the documents are, who understands the finances, who notices when something is off. The other partner steadies. They tolerate delays. They handle the present moment without turning it into catastrophe. They do not panic about every tiny deviation. Their mind is not built to over-optimize. It is built to keep the environment livable. When these roles are balanced, the home starts to feel like oil in the gears. Everything moves without the constant friction of competing priorities. And here is the psychological mechanism nobody wants to hear. People do not just bond through love. People bond through relief. You feel close to someone when they reduce the burden you carry in your head. If you are the planner and your partner is the calmer presence, you feel relieved when you can stop predicting danger. You can exhale. You can stop running simulations. Your nervous system starts to trust that you are not alone in the responsibility. If you are the calm one and your partner is the strategist, you feel relieved when you are supported by structure without having to become the architect of everything. You do not have to guess. You do not have to carry the invisible load of what if. You just live. This difference also changes conflict, because when there is a sufficient gap, you can argue without it becoming a power struggle. The strategist can focus on problem solving. The tolerant partner can focus on emotional safety. The conflict then becomes functional instead of humiliating. But it goes wrong when both people refuse their natural role. Sometimes the sharp person gets addicted to being the authority. They start believing that if they do not correct everything, chaos will win. They begin to feel superior, even if they never use insulting words. Their help becomes control. Their corrections become a subtle insult. You are not managing life correctly. Other times, the calm person refuses the role of peace because they want to protect their dignity. They might act like, I am not inferior, I am just different. But their resistance can be another ego. They may not want to be corrected even when correction would actually reduce stress. In both cases, you end up with a relationship where neither person can fully relax. The sharp person feels disrespected. The calm person feels judged. The home turns into a mirror that reflects shame back and forth. And then you get the most dangerous variant of this truth. The sharp person is secretly contemptuous, and the calm person is secretly resentful. They are not shouting, they are not even always fighting, but contempt and resentment are like slow poison. Contempt is the feeling that the other person's mind is inferior. Resentment is the feeling that you should not have to tolerate the other person's flaws. When contempt meets resentment, nothing can stabilize the relationship. Even affection becomes performative. Even kindness feels like a transaction. Even sex feels like it has an unpaid emotional debt attached. So if you want longevity, you need role clarity, not role perfection. The third truth deepens it. Every household needs one person to do the heavy mental lifting and another person to protect the emotional atmosphere. This is not about gender. It is about psychology. The mental lifter is the person who carries the backpack of responsibility. They plan, they think through consequences, they anticipate, they do budgeting and scheduling, they handle problems before they become emergencies. You might call them practical, but practical is too polite. In the real world, practical often means anxious competence. It means their mind refuses to be idle. It means they would rather think than feel helpless. And yes, they can be exhausting. When they are on edge, every issue feels like a threat. They might overinterpret. They might nag. They might turn the home into a running checklist. But their skill matters. Because homes need forecasting. Somebody must see ahead. If nobody thinks ahead, life becomes reactive. You forget bills, you miss deadlines, you drift. Now the atmosphere protector is the person who keeps the emotional air breathable. They do not complicate. They do not add drama to every problem. They can pause the spiral. They can say, "We will handle it." They can soften the tone. They can prevent every issue from becoming an identity battle. This person may not look impressive. They might not have the loudest opinions. They might not make speeches about fairness or logistics, but they have a rare talent. They can hold the relationship without turning it into a courtroom. When the mental lifter moves too fast, the atmosphere protector slows the pace of emotion. When the mental lifter overthinks, the atmosphere protector brings the mind back to breath. And the most important part, the atmosphere protector does not try to win the debate. They do not need to show that they are right. They need the house to stay warm. This is where many people sabotage themselves. Because if you are the mental lifter, you might confuse pressure with care. You might confuse intensity with love. You might say, "I am just being responsible," while actually your nervous system is demanding obedience from reality. If you are the atmosphere protector, you might confuse tolerance with invisibility. You might accept disrespect for so long that you begin to resent silently. Eventually, your tolerance becomes resentment wearing a mask of calm. And then the worst thing happens, and it is extremely common. The atmosphere protector gets smart suddenly. What does that mean? It means the person who usually keeps peace crosses into ego during one emotional trigger. Maybe someone insults them. Maybe they feel belittled. Maybe they feel ignored. Maybe they feel like their softness is being treated as stupidity. Then the atmosphere protector flips on. They start debating. They start analyzing. They start proving points from A to Z. To the mental lifter, this feels like a challenge to authority. They feel threatened. Their brain translates it into, "We are competing now." To the atmosphere protector, the debate feels like justice. They translate it into, "Finally, I am being heard." Both translations are wrong, because the goal was never justice through logic. The goal was safety through roles. When both minds go into competition, the relationship stops being a home and becomes a battlefield, and it does not require a massive betrayal. It can be sparked by a sentence as small as a breath, a tone, a sigh. But you should have known. Because the real danger is not the content of the argument. The danger is that the roles lose their boundaries. When the atmosphere protector forgets they are supposed to hold emotional calm, and the mental lifter forgets they are supposed to plan without humiliating, you get a loop. The mental lifter pushes for correctness. The atmosphere protector feels disrespected and pushes back for dignity. The loop intensifies until both people believe they are right. And once you believe you are right, you stop listening. You start collecting evidence. This is how years of affection collapse into just 5 minutes of ego mismatch. Now here is the conclusion of this third truth. You do not save a marriage by arguing the best logic. You save a marriage by returning to the correct role quickly. The faster you return, the less damage accumulates. And that requires maturity that most people lack, because maturity looks like losing gracefully without self-abandonment. The fourth truth is the practical one. Marriage is not a contest. It is a system of filling empty spaces. If you both fight to occupy the same space, the whole thing breaks. Let me explain in a way you can feel. Imagine two people walking into a home repair. One knows how to fix the light switch. The other knows how to cook dinner and keep people comfortable. If they both insist on doing the same job, nothing gets finished. The light stays off. People go hungry. Frustration builds. But if each person accepts their strengths without needing credit, then the house becomes functional and pleasant. This is what role alignment looks like emotionally. The sharp person should not try to control everything. They should handle what they naturally handle. The tolerant person should not shrink into silence when respect is needed. They should protect the emotional climate and coordinate cooperation. In a healthy dynamic, there is no need to constantly prove superiority. You let someone cook, even if it is not the most efficient style. You let someone plan the trip, even if you cannot control every detail. You let someone handle the finances, even if you do not fully understand the strategy, because you trust the competence they bring. But here is the trap. Many couples do not actually want cooperation. They want validation. The proof is simple. Watch what happens when one person does something well. Does the other person feel grateful? Or does the other person become irritated because it reminds them of an area where they feel lacking? If it is irritation, you are not in partnership. You are in competition disguised as partnership. That is why some couples do not fight loudly. They fight through subtle sabotage. One person over-explains because they need to feel superior. The other person under-explains or refuses because they need to feel safe from being judged. Then they turn the home into a place where nothing can be done easily, because both people are guarding their ego. And that is how the two strong people story becomes a tragedy. The irony is brutal. Both people might be genuinely intelligent, but intelligence without humility turns into arrogance. Arrogance turns into contempt. Contempt turns into divorce energy. So the skill in marriage is not being impressive. The skill is being aligned. There is a specific kind of conversation that signals alignment. It goes like this. One person brings a plan. The other person brings support. One person brings decision-making. The other person brings emotional safety. One person brings structure. The other person brings softness. No one tries to steal the microphone from the other. When you do that, your relationship becomes smoother than you expect. Not because problems disappear, because the emotional temperature stays stable enough for problems to be solved. Now we reach the fifth truth, the one that feels harsh because it asks for self-control instead of romantic thinking. If you want love to last, when one person is naturally faster, sharper, more reactive, the other person must not betray. And betrayal here is not only cheating. Betrayal is disrespecting the role that keeps the